All right, thank you, Jackie, and good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's my great pleasure to be here with all of you, and I hope you're healthy and well. Today's topic is an exciting one, tips on hiking the Bruce Trail end to end. And hiking the end to end is a bucket list item for many Canadians. And when you complete that grueling 900 kilometers, you get our coveted badge and our end to end number and a nice certificate. And so far in our 50-year history, we've given out over 4,000 of those official end to end numbers. So congratulations to all of you that have actually completed it that might be on the webinar today. And welcome to all of you that are thinking about tackling this. And I can tell you we've got an absolute expert that's going to help answer a lot of questions and give a great presentation today. So I have the great pleasure of introducing our talented guest, Ruth Moffatt. I'm just going to go through a quick bio. Ruth was a career banker until 2011 when her husband was transferred to New York, where they spent nearly 10 years. Looking for a new challenge after returning to Niagara, Ruth recalled that an older sister had wanted to hike the Bruce Trail back in the 70s. Ruth signed up for a Niagara end-to-end event in 2013, and after 3 grueling days and many blisters, she didn't return hiking until the Iroquois end-to-end until 2014. Since then, Ruth has completed the trail many times. Ruth became a certified hike leader in 2015 and a certified hike instructor in 2019. Ruth has sat on the Niagara Club Board and has been involved with the Bruce Trail Conservancy for land securement and has been an active fundraiser for the BTC for over 5 years. Ruth talently leads many end-to-end hikes every year on different sections of the Bruce Trail and has taken groups of hikers to Frontenac and Algonquin Provincial Parks and Gros Morne National Park, as well as many other trails in Ontario. This past March, Ruth, together with hike leaders Jackie Van Dyke and Sandy Green, and 12 others, embarked on their first 2 weeks of a 6-week end-to-end of the entire trail. This was a fundraiser for the BTC in which they collectively raised over $13,000. Even though it was cut short after 4 days, they're hopeful to resume their end-to-end at a later date. I know Ruth as a talented hiker and dedicated supporter. Ruth is an amazing volunteer, fundraiser, and just a great human being. Ruth, thanks for all you do and welcome.
Well, thank you, Michael. It's a pleasure to be here, and welcome to everyone that has logged on. I hope that this webinar will leave you with some tips and ideas on how you can approach hiking the Bruce Trail, either the entire trail or maybe just a section of it. One of the questions that someone asked is, where do I start? So I suggest you start with the trail that is closest to where you live. You need not start at one end or the other, i.e. Queenston or Tobermory. The beauty of the Bruce Trail is that you can start anywhere you like for any distance you like, and you can hike one section of the trail this year, 2 sections next year, skip a year, whatever you like, whenever you like. So we're going to get at it. Oops. Oh, here we go. It's not moving. Technical difficulties.
Can I move it?
I don't know.
Please be patient while Ruth figures out her command on her computer. Ruth, the page down button might help you out.
Yeah, it's, okay, here we go. Technology is great when it works. Okay, so this page is your resources page. These are the most important things that you can refer to when planning a hike, either an individual section hike or the entire trail. So in the middle, well, first of all, the brucetrail.org website has all of these details on it. It also lists all of the club websites. The map is in the middle, which is edition 29. Soon that will be, soon edition 30 will be coming out. Also on the brucetrail.org website, you can see about membership if you're not a member, and also the Bruce Trail online hike schedule. So on the right is the picture of the app that you can also choose to use when you're planning your hikes. A note about the app: take some time to get used to it. Admittedly, when I first started using it, it was a little challenging, but now I don't do any hikes without it. I love it. So this is just a screenshot of the online hike schedule, and you will find on here a variety of hikes. These are all hikes that are led by hike leaders. The details of each hike will include the pace, the distance, where to meet, etc. And if you have any concerns about any aspect of the hike, by all means, just reach out to the hike leader with an email and ask that particular person whatever you need to know. If you don't find a hike on here that suits your pace or your abilities, reach out to the club that you are a member of and speak to the hiking coordinator or the director of that particular club. Let them know what you would like to see, and I'm sure that they would be happy to work with you to have a hike that suits you. I should also mention that these group hikes that we offer is a great way to meet other people that have, you know, the same goal in mind. So it's a great way to meet up with others that, you know, want to do a certain section of the trail or the end or the whole trail. Great place to meet other people. So why hike the end to end? So if you were to ask any hiker, they're going to give you a different reason. But for me, it's the beauty, the flora, the fauna, the scenic views. I like to take photos. I'm not so much into birding, but you know, there's lots of birds on the trail. For the sense of accomplishment, for the badges, of course, for the camaraderie of group hikes, and for physical and mental health. And, you know, some people would just say for the challenge of it. So I'm just going to take you through a few photos at this time. This is Ingls Falls in the Sydenham section. Beautiful, beautiful waterfall. This is actually the first Steeltown Stomp Pike ever, and it was one of the first hikes that I ever led. The Steeltown Stomp Hike was created as a new event and is a fundraiser for both the Iroquois Club and the Niagara Club. Was one of my first hikes, and at the time we didn't have the online hike schedule, so I really had no idea how many people would show up. And the day of the event, over 50 people showed up. And I found this picture the other day, and I was looking at it thinking, at the time, I didn't know hardly anyone in the photo, but now, in looking at it, I think I know just about everybody. So that just goes to show you what sort of a community the Bruce Trail clubs have. And for the badges. So if you need to know anything about any of these badges, and this is my own personal collection, all of the details are on all of the individual club websites. The badges are awarded on completion of the main trail, the side trails, and other special event hikes. For instance, Iroquois Club, they have a winter, a summer, and a club organized end-to-end badge. In addition, there is a badge for the side trails and a snowshoe badge. And of note, several of the clubs, Niagara, Iroquois, Caledon, and Peninsula, all have badges for younger hikers. And we do love to see younger people out on the trail. All of the badges are available from each club, and you can check their website for details. Or you can wait and apply for all of the club badges when you get your orange and blue. There's one at the bottom of the screen, end-to-end badge from the Conservancy. Mushrooms, part of the flora of the trail. I like to hike in the spring and in the fall, anywhere on the trail. Some more mushrooms. The one on the left is an earth star mushroom. I've only ever seen one. In the middle is a bearded tooth, I think. And of course, the giant puffballs are pretty common. The fauna, the wildlife, the red-spotted newt, the garter snake, and the yellow-spotted salamander, which, again, the yellow-spotted salamander is pretty unusual to see. More wildlife. That tail on the left is the tail end of a eastern Massasauga rattlesnake. So I have never hiked up in the peninsula and not seen one. They're pretty common up there, to be honest. In the middle is the closest I've ever gotten to a bear. You can see the footprints. And another rarity was that owl that we spotted one time, again, up in the peninsula. So we've also seen cranes, beavers, porcupines, and just a little note about bears. You know, you can buy bear spray if that makes you feel more comfortable, but it's a good idea to travel in groups where there is presence of bears. And if you do see one, just make a lot of noise and make yourself seem really large, perhaps by, you know, raising your backpack above your shoulders. Orchids I love. So on the left is a showy lady slipper. In the middle is a striped coral orchid, and of course the yellow lady slipper. So ferns, we love to see ferns as well. So, you know, one of the things about hiking the trail, we pass by these things and maybe don't give it another look. But if you are inclined to take an interest in these things, the walking fern on the left, the middle fern is a wall rue, and the one on the right is a purple stem cliffbrake. And we are not experts, so you know, if I make a mistake in labeling any of these things, by all means, let me know. We also have a hart's tongue fern on the left, which I gather is quite rare. In the middle is a blue flag iris, and on the right is a scarlet painted cup or Indian paintbrush flower. We also have maidenhair fern. There's a seed head, and I've only seen this on the right once. It's a coral, or cancer root, I should say. Weird looking. So let's get into the trail itself. Should you go south? Should you go north? If you live in Thornbury, which direction should you go? So my personal preference would be to go wherever it's closest to you. And certainly I think, anyway, that the northern sections are perhaps a little more challenging than the southern sections. You can also see that the Toronto section is just over 50 kilometers, which, you know, is easy to pick off if you would like to start with a smaller section first. The Peninsula section, I should add, is also probably my favorite section for the beauty and the scenic views. Many hikers only want to hike just the Peninsula section. That's fine. Again, you know, choose a portion of one of the bigger clubs, choose another club. You can zip around. And whether you hike the trail 20 to 25 kilometers a day, or you're only doing 10 to 15 kilometers per day, here's an idea as to how long it might take you. So a few considerations and logistics for hiking an end-to-end. We need to know, you know, when and your ability. So what time of the year do you want to hike? Certainly, you know, I would probably not choose to hike the northern sections like Peninsula, Sydenham, Beaver Valley. even Blue Mountains in the winter, there's simply just too much snow. In fact, we did some winter hiking this past spring in Caledon, and there was still a great deal of snow. So the distance, so multi-day, do you want to do multi-day, multi-week, or non-stop? What time of the day? I like to start really early in the morning because I like to finish by 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So you have some time, you know, to yourself if you're doing multi-day hikes. Seasonal, of course, we talked about that. And is your fitness level ready for hiking? And I'm going to put you right back to the online hike schedule. That is the best resource to get in shape for longer distances. So distance and transportation. The daily trail distance, you have to decide, do you want to go 10 kilometers? Do you want to do 20? Do you want to do 30 even? Getting to and from the trail each day, is it going to be a group hike or solo? And one of the most important things is the available parking. So if there's a group of you, you want to make sure that you have enough room in the parking areas for all of your cars. Parking is very important to, or I should say authorized parking areas are very important to adhere to, because we don't want to block driveways. We don't want to park where, you know, the residents don't appreciate it. We don't want to risk by parking illegally. Accommodation, do you want to camp? Do you want to tent? Do you want to bring your trailer? Motels, there's bed and breakfast, there's Airbnbs, lots and lots of accommodation throughout the trail. And of course, hiking with others, again, the online hike schedule. All of the hikes on the online hike schedule are led by certified hike leaders. The hike leader certification, if you are interested, is available through many of the clubs, and it is offered in cooperation with Hike Ontario. So I just wanted to add as well that, you know, not to underestimate the challenge of hiking. When I first hiked the Niagara end to end, I thought I was in pretty good shape, but clearly I was not. You know, check with your doctor to get their go-ahead, start small, you know, gradually build up to longer distances, and your body should adapt. So here is one of the questions from someone indicated that they had hiked up to Tobermory, if I was reading it correctly, and but they only like to hike 2.5 kilometers per hour. So I took that to mean that perhaps they like shorter distances. So I did a quick sample 15-day plan for the Peninsula section, which is the section that they have remaining. So this could be split up into 5-day segments, or, you know, 1-week segments, however which way you like. And so you would meet in Wyerton, for instance, and carpool to Mallory Beach Side Trail. So that's a 10.4 kilometer hike plus the side trail distance. So all of these are around that distance, except for the areas where you are limited with parking restrictions. So for instance, once you get to Halfway Dump Road, the parking lot there, you have no choice but to hike to Little Cove Road, which is 16 kilometers. And I would say that that is probably, you know, part of the most difficult section of that, section of trail. And always, always check for the Bruce Trail, check brucetrail.org for trail updates, reroutes, and closures before embarking on a hike. If you have the app, all of those updates are put up there as well. So the app is the most up-to-date resource that you can find. Someone asked how difficult is the Peninsula section? And I would say that it is probably the most difficult section of trail to hike, but it's also the most beautiful. It lands on the must-do list far and ahead of any of the other sections, I would say. Anyway, that's just my own personal opinion. So one person had a question about the comparison between the Bruce Trail and the Appalachian Trail. So the Appalachian, you can see from the chart that I Googled and put up, the Appalachian Trail is much tougher, much longer. The Pacific Crest and the Continental Divide, those three trails, all in the United States, are considered the Triple Crown of hiking or of hiker trails. But the Bruce Trail, I always think, is our jewel. So, you know, I think that portions of the Bruce Trail could compare with the other trails. But, you know, those three are, you know, because of the distance and the elevation are far tougher, excuse me. So how long is the Bruce Trail? It is 911 kilometers, but the distance between Queenston and Tobermory, if you were to drive it, is actually only 377 kilometers. So when I plan my accommodations, I would stay in one spot and hike, you know, both ends of wherever I'm at. So when you're planning your accommodations, you don't necessarily have to stay in, you know, 9 different hotels or motels or Airbnbs. You could simply stay in 6 or 7, perhaps. I think the first time I did Peninsula, I was of the impression that I had to move my accommodation the further up the trail I got, and it's simply not the case. Now, when I go and hike the Peninsula, I stay in Lion's Head and I don't move. So, and it works. And it's a lot easier because then you're not packing up and moving. So here's an example of what you could potentially set up if you live, you know, outside of where the Bruce Trail is. So if you're beginning in Niagara, you could stay perhaps in Grimsby, or you could stay in Hamilton or even Burlington, and hike the entire section of Niagara, Iroquois, and Toronto. You could then move to Orangeville and hike Caledon and Dufferin. You could then go up to Collingwood to hike Blue Mountain and maybe one day of Beaver Valley, and so on and so forth. Flesherton for Beaver Valley. I always stay in one spot in Owen Sound, and in Lion's Head, I always stay. So whatever works for you, but this is, you know, an idea as to how you could accomplish the entire trail without having to move around too much. So we're going to get into how to manage to hike the trail. So the first and easiest, and some might say the hardest, is to participate in one of the club organized end-to-ends. So every single one of the 9 clubs run their own end-to-ends. Some of them are every other year, some of them are every year. So you sign up, usually through Eventbrite. Keep an eye on the advertisements for it. Some of them sell out very, very quickly. So you have to really be on top of it. Some of them limit how many people can participate. I think one of the clubs only has 1 bus because of limited parking. So if you're interested in doing this, just a cautionary note, they are challenging because, for instance, Niagara is 83 kilometers now, and you're doing that over 3 days. So yeah, they're challenging. So they're for experienced hikers. If you are inclined to participate, just make sure that your fitness level is at that level. Another way to do an end-to-end just by using one vehicle. You can drop your hiking partners at point A and drive to point B, and then you cross one another on the trail and pass the key. Using two vehicles, same idea, but you all go together. Hiking solo. And we don't recommend people to hike solo, but recognize that people do choose to do it. And that is primarily just for safety's sake. If something should happen to you, we recommend a minimum group of 3 hikers hiking together. If something should happen to one person would stay with that individual and the third person would go to get help. Trail angels, many of the clubs have volunteer trail angels. There's taxis. I used a taxi service when I was hiking up in Sydenham Section one time. Bicycles. The most important thing about using your bicycle to hike a portion of the trail is to always hike back to your vehicle, just in case your bicycle is stolen. We hope that doesn't happen, but make sure that you lock it up well. And of course, the B&B hosts sometimes will offer you a ride to your start, but by all means check in advance, and sometimes there's an added fee for that, so just check with them. So hiking with children, several of the clubs are embracing this and now offer badges for the children. Niagara, Iroquois, Caledon, and Peninsula clubs have hiking programs for children. So some ideas are just to keep the distances shorter than you normally would go. Hike once a week. Make it part of your routine. And make a vacation of it if you'd like to hike some of the trail that's further away. And avoid bad weather as well, if possible. I don't like damp, wet weather for hiking, unless it's warm rain. Okay, so again, several of the clubs have trail angels. Niagara Bruce Trail Club has them. Iroquois, Caledon, Blue Mountain, Dufferin, Blue Mountain, and I believe that's it. Oh, sorry, I beg your pardon, Beaver Valley. So 6 of them have trail angels now. And so this is as of right now. I'm not, by all means, if you want to use trail angels, check with the club to make sure that that service is still in effect. Plus you need to give them lots of notice as well. So camping, lots and lots of questions about camping. And again, I direct you to the brucetrail.org website. That link there shows you where all of the authorized campgrounds are along the trail. And it's really important to only camp in the designated campgrounds because otherwise it would be considered trespassing. And because the trail runs through so much private property, we don't want to put that privilege that we have of hiking on someone's private property in jeopardy. It's not worth the risk. And, the risk is that the property owner asks us to remove the trail and we end up hiking along roads, and that's never ideal. One of the strategies for the Bruce Trail Conservancy is to create more overnight rest areas along the trail. So on that note, on the Bruce Trail maps and the app, there's little red tents that show you where camping is permitted. I should note too that if you do plan to camp up in the peninsula, reservations are needed and required well in advance, so keep that in mind. So finally, we respectfully ask that for people not to stealth or to wild camp. It's just not worth the risk. So, okay, some challenges along the way, and also hiking with dogs. So first of all, dogs must be leashed at all times. The stiles, the little ladders that go over the fences can be challenging for your dog to get over. Parts of the trail do not allow dogs, primarily where there's livestock. And it's really important to obey that signage because we don't want to stampede a herd of cattle running across the field. Electric fences are fairly common, and if your dog gets a shock, it could easily bolt. And I mention this because we did run into a woman who was hiking with her dog, hiking an end-to-end, and she was somewhere, I think in the Beaver Valley section. And her dog got near an electric fence, and she spent a great deal of time looking for her dog. Happy ending though, they did reunite, and but the poor dog, I felt so bad. The presence of wildlife could present a concern if you hike with a dog. Accommodation can be a concern if you have a dog. Check with the owners always. Poison ivy is prevalent throughout the trail. Your first line of defense for poison ivy is identification. So get used to identifying it. And it's pretty easy to identify. Leaves of 3, leave them be. In the spring, when it's first coming out, it's a really nice shade of red. And in the fall, it's another really beautiful shade of red. Ticks are a concern throughout the trail. So always, always, always check your body for ticks, particularly in the southern sections of trail. Mosquitoes, black flies, and of course the weather conditions for hiking, ice, snow, and mud. Always be prepared for these and other challenges. So here's a sample log. There was lots of questions about how to complete a log for your hiking. So the best way is to keep it simple. So for example, you were planning to hike the Iroquois Trail. Oh, I forgot a 0 on there. January 4th, where you started and where you stopped. January 5th, where you started, where you stopped. Or you can use the kilometer markings that are in the guidebook if you prefer. And again, whether you started 25 years ago, last year, or 3 months ago, it all counts towards an end-to-end. And if you are inclined, you can apply for a certificate from the BTC. As Michael mentioned, over 4,000 people, or 4,000 certificates have been handed out because many people hike it more than once. But if the last Bruce Trail magazine is any indication, there was a record number of end-to-end recognitions in 2019, over 200 people. Well, maybe not individuals because there's several duplicates in there, people hiking it more than once. And again, it could be someone that started 25 years ago that simply finished in 2019. So, I know someone that took 47 years to get it done. The record, someone asked what the record is, and we think it's 9 days, which is, moving pretty quickly. They're obviously running. I think the standing record for the number of times hiking for a woman is 18 times. And for a man, it's 50 times, hiking the trail 50 times. Imagine that. And so a fun fact as well is that all the logs that you submit are time-stamped on arrival and kept in the Bruce Trail archives. So that means that if you're applying for a number and an end-to-end badge, you know, you want to get it in before your hiking buddies. So I'm just going to take you through now some sections of the trail, some photos that I've captured along the way. So starting in Niagara, you'll go through, you won't actually hike through them, but you'll see lots of vineyards. The picture in the middle is Ingls Falls in Short Hills Provincial Park. And the Screaming Tunnel, the famous Screaming Tunnel on the right. Onto Iroquois. That Bailey Bridge is not far from Shadok Golf Course and is part of the Shadok Radial Trail. The one in the middle is Devil's Punch Bowl Waterfalls. And there's lots of areas where the trail passes by pastoral farms with red barns, which is a favorite of mine. Into Toronto. Toronto section has great rocks and great trees growing up through the rocks, some fantastic vistas, and of course the heritage area of Limehouse. Into Caledon, very famous for the beautiful fall colors, the Badlands, and along Escarpment Side Road, if you get started early enough and it's clear, you can have a clear view of Toronto in the distance. So into Dufferin, on the left is hiking Dufferin in the winter. That was very challenging. That person in the picture is my friend Doris. And that tree, I don't know how old that tree is, but it is a favorite. And you'll see that that tree on the left is the same tree on the right. I don't go by it without taking a picture. And in the middle is Split Rock Narrows Trail. And that is a blue side trail. Beautiful, beautiful area. So into the Blue Mountain section. Some beautiful vistas. Along the trail, you'll often find old wrecks of cars, old farm equipment that has been abandoned, and of course, fantastic structural bridges. Into Beaver Valley. Again, you know, I think every section of trail has beautiful vistas like that. Eugenie Falls in the middle, and Beaver Valley and their apples. There's lots of wild apples in Beaver Valley section. Well, maybe they were once domestic apples, but the land has been let go, and so you always see lots and lots of apples on the trail. So into Sydenham, Ingls Falls, we saw a picture of that in the winter a little earlier. In the middle is Palisade Rock area. There's some caves in there, beautiful, beautiful rock area. It's a very challenging section too, I might add. And these two beauties were just before heading up to Skinner's Bluff. Okay, we're in the Peninsula section now. That farmhouse is just a favorite of mine. I like to take a picture of it every time I pass by. There's some rock outcroppings that are definite photo ops. This was pretty early in the morning, and sometimes the sky meets Georgian Bay, and you can't tell the difference between where it stops and ends. It's so spectacularly beautiful. And also in the Peninsula section, there's some potholes, glacier potholes. And there's one not far from Lion's Head that you can actually climb into. So we sometimes put hikers into them and take a picture from up on the top. And I should caution you too that indeed, if access to the top is been closed off, please adhere to that. So if you come across a tree that's been, that has fallen down across the trail, you know, carefully go around it or go over it. But do please let the club know, the club that you're hiking in. Take a picture of the tree and take a screen print of the Bruce Trail app if you have it, and then send that into the club, and they'll have somebody get out to deal with it. And if you ever do see maintenance workers, such as the two Peters on the right, by all means thank them for all of the work that they do in keeping the trail tidy and free of, you know, big logs like that. You know, they work really, really hard. And if you are inclined to volunteer to become a maintenance worker, please get in touch with the club. So that's Audrey on the left, and Peter on the right. So Michael had mentioned that we had embarked the middle of March to do an entire end-to-end of the trail as a fundraiser for the trail. So that's our group back in March when we started at the Queenston Cairn. And this is another photo from a while back. I was leading a group of hikers up in the Peninsula section, and 3 of us were finishing the entire trail that particular time. So I had made up signs for the 3 of us. The signs are optional, of course, but butter tarts. Now, I just want to make a little point about butter tarts. Butter tarts, you know, someone asked, what do I carry in my backpack? So the most important things are water, food, first aid, a cell phone with a fully charged battery, a whistle, a hat, a rain jacket, sunglasses, lip balm, a map, extra socks if you like, bug spray. But tarts are really great to have on the trail. Butter tarts. I hope that this presentation. My husband is saying, bring a jackknife, but really you don't need a jackknife. You don't. You don't need fire starter or anything like that either. So I hope that I meet all of you on the trail at some point. Thank you again to Michael and the Bruce Trail Conservancy, and to everyone that tuned in. I think we're going to have some time now for questions, if anyone has submitted any questions.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Ruth. What a great tour. And besides being a talented hiker, you're also a talented photographer. So it was, you know, right now we're all missing the trail, and it was really nice to see some pictures out there. So thanks for a great presentation. There are quite a few questions, and so I'm going to pitch a few of them to you now. And thanks to all of you for the great questions so far. So the first question that I have is, what type of footwear do you recommend for the trail, Ruth?
Ah, yes. So I buy sometimes the least expensive footwear. You'd be surprised. And I switch up my boots. I was buying Keens for a while. I was buying Merrells. One of the most important pieces of advice I got from MEC, actually, is to go in the afternoon when your feet are potentially more swollen, and try your boots on at that point. And they do have, you know, they allow you to walk around the store, and they've got a bit of a ramp. There's also various ways to tie your laces for, you know, tightening up your heel if that's an area of concern. Another piece of advice I got was that if you ever get blisters, then you've got the wrong socks. So experiment with socks as well. I use, you know, smart wool socks usually in the winter, but in the summer I use thinner socks because, you know, it gets hot and humid and you don't want blisters.
Okay, great. Thank you. I've got a couple comments here. Someone's saying, like, thank you, you've inspired me. Someone else says, thank you, awesome, inspiring. Perhaps a list for the backpack and your butter tart recipe.
Yeah. I've got a very secret butter tart recipe, one that is gone through the generations in my family, but I struggle with the pastry. So if somebody else can make the pastry, I'm good with the filling.
Okay, great. I've got a question here. Someone's asked, have you ever had a medical emergency along the trail, and how did you handle that?
So I have not had a medical emergency. I participated in the 50-kilometer challenge up in the Peninsula, and we weren't long getting started, and someone did take a fall. As it turned out, she did, I think she broke her wrist. And it was so sad because we had just gotten started, and, you know, these things happen, you know, unexpectedly and very quickly, unfortunately. So someone, you know, stayed with her and took care of her, got her back to checkpoint. I know that in speaking with other hike leaders, they have had, you know, various medical emergencies. Dehydration was one where the guy had to, you know, get taken to the hospital. You know, I guess planning is key. When I lead hikes, I always ask people to register in advance, and you know, if it's going to be, I kind of avoid hiking in the heat of the summer, but if I know that the weather conditions are not going to be that great, I will send out an email to remind people that, you know, you have to bring extra water or food, or, you know, clothing if it's snowing or raining or whatever.
Okay, great, thank you. I got a question here, and you touched on this a little bit, but can you please address hiking the end-to-end, but not in individual sections, but more like a pilgrimage?
Well, if you are planning to do a through hike, if that's what you mean, you know, unfortunately, there aren't areas to camp through all of the sections of trail. So you have to pull yourself off the trail and spend the night, you know, either in a motel or a B&B. Again, the Conservancy, one of their strategies is to create more overnight rest areas, but that will take some time. And, you know, a pilgrimage can be just one section of trail, can it not? And, you know, I think of the Peninsula because you can do a through hike up there if you have reservations at some of the campgrounds that require it. Yeah, a pilgrimage of the entire trail is without taking yourself off the trail is impossible in my mind, unfortunately.
Okay. Ruth, I've got 2 or 3 questions that say or talk about how is cell phone coverage along the way?
Yeah, it's good, except for a few areas up in the Peninsula where there's no cell signal. And that has been my experience. And I'm always on my phone. You ask anybody, I'm either taking a picture or I'm checking the Bruce Trail app or, you know, looking at my messages or whatever.
Sure. Okay, and I've got a question here. Someone's a little bit nervous about hiking along the roadways of the sections that are on the road. And so do you have any tips about walking along the road?
Yeah, so just follow the rules of the road. It's never great, those pieces of trail that are on the road, particularly some of the busier roads. There's some side roads up in various sections of trail, which are kind of enjoyable. You know, it gives your legs a break from the trail hiking or trail walking. And certainly, you know, it gives you a different viewpoint as well, perspective. You know, there's things along some of the roads that are, you know, worthwhile having a look at. So just follow the rules of the road, hike facing traffic always, wear bright colors. Hikers do wear bright colors as a rule. If you're hiking with a group, I think it's better to hike together along the road as a group rather than spread out. Yeah, that's it.
Okay, and then Ruth, there's a question here and it has to do with the club end-to-ends versus the entire end-to-end. So, but I'll let you tackle this one. It says, can you apply for a badge after each section is completed?
Yes, absolutely. You can apply to the club, and each of the clubs, their websites have a section about badges. And you just submit your log in that manner that I showed earlier, and they will mail you a badge. So the badges are typically $5. They might be a bit more if you're not a member. If you wait to apply for your club badges from the Bruce Trail Conservancy, I think the whole lot of the badges is in the area of about $75 plus $15 for your end-to-end badge. And they also have another nice little Bruce Trail end-to-end badge too that you can buy as an option.
Okay,
you
great.
Also get a certificate from the Bruce Trail Conservancy with a number on it.
That's right. I've got a question here for your recommendations on drinking water along the trail. Is it necessary to bring water for the full day, or do you have access along the way?
Yeah, I wouldn't drink water along the trail. That's just my personal preference. You know, we hiked the La Cloche Silhouette Trail and in Killarney, and you know, the water up there is, you know, coming from lakes, and we filtered it, of course, but you know, along the Bruce Trail, you've got runoff from farms, and there's beavers, and I simply wouldn't drink it, even with a filter. If you are hiking a long distance, I have seen caches of water placed, you know, along the trail where you know you're going to be hiking through there, so you've planned in advance to cache some water.
Okay, great. Just a couple more. Is there a means for individuals wishing to tackle an end-to-end to find each other?
Yes. You know, participate in those group hikes from the online hike schedule. That's what I did when I first started. That's where I met so many people through doing the group hikes. And now when I lead hikes, I often meet new people that I don't know, that, you know, are just a pleasure to have to spend day after day with, and to get a section completed. So that is your best resource for finding like-minded individuals that you could potentially hike with at a later date.
Okay, great. And then I'll make this the last question, but it says, thank you, Ruth. I'm new to Bruce Trail at Iroquois Club and enjoying the shorter hikes. How will I know when I'm ready to tackle a more challenging hike?
Oh, you'll know. I think you'll know. You know, when I started hiking, as I mentioned, I did the Niagara Bruce Trail end to end. And I was in way over my head, honestly. I thought I was in really good shape, but hiking is a different beast, because you're hiking over rocks and branches and potentially on slippery surfaces if there's a lot of mud or water. So the balancing aspect of hiking is, you know, you find all of those little muscles, and you know, and if your shoes or your hiking boots are fairly new, you want to get them well broken in ahead of time. So I always suggest to people to start small and gradually build up your distance over time, and ensure that you incorporate some hill training, because, oh my goodness, there's a lot of hills over the course of the trail, and they are challenging at times. Yeah. So
Okay,
your
great.
body should adapt to, like, you know, the more you push your body, the longer your distance is, the more you challenge it, the more it will, you know, hopefully react for you and accept that, you know, this is the new norm. So.
Okay, great. Well, Ruth, it's clear that you're truly an expert, and we're so grateful for your presentation today. I think we all learned a lot. There were some questions that we didn't get to, but we can reach out and try and answer those. And you can also email info@brucetrail.org, and we'll get to some of those as well. But Ruth, thanks to you. I'll let you sort of close it out and take us home.
Well, again, thank you, Michael, and to the Bruce Trail Conservancy for allowing me to share some tips for hiking the Bruce Trail. You know, it's very near and dear to my heart. It's, you know, pretty much the center of most of my activity. And certainly for those that have, you know, logged on, if you do see me on the trail, stop me and have a chat. Maybe I'll have a butter tart in my backpack. You never know. So thank you.
Okay, great. Well, thank you, Ruth, and stay healthy and safe, everyone. Thanks so much.
Thanks. Bye.